U.S. has approved the plan to strike Iranian targets in Syria and Iraq, officials say. Let's take a look.
And Secretary concluding a very lengthy news conference talking about it being a dangerous moment in the Middle East. He said it had been difficult days for the Department of Defense since Sunday's attack, which killed 3 service personnel in Jordan. Then there was that lengthy apology about that controversy about his hospital visit, being treated for prostate cancer, which of course the president was not told about. He apologized to the American president, to his team and the public. He gave a long explanation, but he said it was an explanation, not an excuse. We're listening to all of that. Nick Beek is in Jerusalem for us. Nick, let's return to the many comments he made on the potential US retaliatory action. Obviously minimal details, but what we've learnt is that the attacks over a number of days, there'll be a series of attacks, they'll be inside Iraq and Syria, and crucially not inside Iranian territory itself.
Yeah, Matthew, I thought it was really interesting listening to the US's top defense official there, outlining how the White House sees Iran as stirring things up in the Middle East. We've already heard from one of his colleagues how this part of the world...
It's kind of funny because like this kind of back and forth has happened, not to the same severity, not to the same intensity for a while. Like the only reason why the media is paying more attention to it is because right now, tensions are really high due to Israel's ethnic cleansing campaign in Gaza. But Iran-backed proxies and militia groups have been operating in the region almost in perpetuity. They've certainly been operating in Syria. They've certainly been operating in Iraq, especially with a lot more prominence and influence in Iraq as well. And this is this is not new. The fact that there's like a back and forth scuffles occurring with like minor, I would say oftentimes minor and maybe sometimes some serious casualties, often on the side of the Iranian backed proxies, but it's a real tit for tat. Now, of course, the situation is a little bit different because tensions have been elevated greatly. America's involvement in the region has escalated. Israel's actions are causing everyone to pay more attention to what's going on, right? And by the way, those yes, as this chatter correctly pointed out, a lot of those Iranian-backed militias did a phenomenal job fighting against ISIS. Okay, so that's also something to remember. Like the major villains of like Shia militia forces or whoever the fuck Iran is like. Iran is oftentimes offering like logistical and structural support to are going to be the Salafists. Okay, it's going to be like the Al-Nusra Front or Al-Qaeda or other like Wahhabi and Salafist movements in the region. It's not like people that America also recognizes as like the bad guys. One famous example is obviously like in the aftermath of 9/11, Iran was sharing Iran was sharing Taliban targets with the United States of America in Afghanistan and Al-Qaeda targets too, if I'm not mistaken. So like, it's not as though these guys are, what the fuck? It's not as though these guys are not collaborating at all and like are mortal enemies or anything. So in this circumstance, usually there is way more collaboration than you think, by the way. Trump did this as well. They'll tell ahead of time to the other country that they are going to be bombing certain positions, and then those positions will be emptied out. It will still be harmful to the operations, but it's usually more of a collaborative bombing campaign. It's weird, but that is usually how it works. So I think America probably, I don't know exactly, but I assume they like cut a deal. I assume they cut a deal with Iran maybe, and maybe Iran didn't want to cut the deal, but why would they want strikes in Iran? No. None of this is in Iran. This is not okay. One thing to consider here. Okay. Iran is not as far as I understand, this bombing campaign is not going to target Iran. It's simply going to target Syria and Iraq. Okay? That's usually how this works. They don't just like strike at Iran directly. They strike at the proxies in Syria and they strike at the proxies in Iraq. The people that suffer are going to be the Syrian people, the Iraqi people, depending on where they're striking. But that's usually how this goes. However, that's not enough for the Republicans, as Ben Shapiro, Lindsey Graham, and many others are currently salivating at the prospect of striking Iran directly. That would be a major escalation, which would lead to major retaliation from the Iranian forces directly. The IRGC would most likely start operating with great severity and most likely damage infrastructure that America and the rest of the globe relies on, specifically on the energy side of things. They would most likely immediately start launching missiles that are not as easy to apprehend or defend against on like oil refineries and the like. The campaign will reportedly target Iranian individuals and facilities in Iraq and Syria, as well as proxy forces, says Elint News. I think the aim here is to potentially kill Iranian-backed Iraqi militias members as well as their facilities. The reason they're saying it will be across multiple weeks is because they could wait until the IRGC forces let their guard down and re-enter Iraq and Syria and hit them. Iran is not seizing Iran, not have militia groups. USA just causing problem in the Middle East. USA needs to get their head out of their ass and leave Arab region. Isn't this literally what happened before Trump won in 2016 when Obama bombed Syria? Well, Trump did this similar thing. I believe the positions that Trump bombed in Syria were also depopulated beforehand. It's more so about in a lot of instances, these bombing campaigns are more collaborative than you would think. And it's about like crippling the infrastructure so that it's harder for them to push back and harder for them to actually attack next time around. And it's more of like an optical conversation. It's for optics. Like they want to show to the American public, like, you know, you don't fuck with America, right? Like Americans think like we bombed the shit out of them. We did a great job. And then, you know, they have something to show for it. It's a continuation of that same tit for tat.
Faces a danger it hasn't seen for some 50 years. And Lloyd Austin there was making clear that he believed Iran was responsible for this through funding and supporting various groups across this region. Chiefly, some of the groups that have been operating within Syria and Iraq. And of course, he said that it didn't really matter how much Iran knew about that specific attack at the weekend in which 3 American service personnel were killed. He said the fact that Iran are giving weapons and giving backing to these groups means that Iran is responsible, and that's why Iranian targets will be looked at in the coming hours and days at a time of America's choosing, he was saying. But yes, you're right, there will be no strikes on Iranian soil. I think that was always seen as highly unlikely. The White House saying they don't want a wider conflict, they don't want to exacerbate things, but they do have to send a message. And of course, that sending a message extends to a few different things in the Middle East at the moment, notably the Houthi rebels who have been firing from within Yemen out towards the Red Sea. They say they've been hitting ships which are linked to Israel, the US, the UK, and they've been doing this in solidarity with the people of Gaza. And they say they'll continue to hit shipping until the fighting stops and Israeli forces withdraw. Clearly, there's no sign of that happening at the moment. So there are concerns that with more military activity in the Middle East about
With that logic, he must agree that America is responsible for the idea of bombing Gaza, right? Yeah, but you don't understand. They're the good guys. And not scary. Okay? Whereas, you know, Israel, good guys because they are allies and they are the American proxy, and therefore their genocide good. Okay? Their genocide good. Their war crime good. The other guys, on the other hand, and their proxies, whether it's defensive or offensive posturing, doesn't matter. What their goals don't matter. What their goals are don't matter. Those are the bad guys. Okay? When you are the biggest power player on the fucking planet, it doesn't matter. Okay? You're the playground bully. You're the playground bully. You go in with a gun in most instances and scare the shit out of everybody. Sometimes use the gun. And if anybody turns around and retaliates and say, hey, man, fuck you. Not even like slaps you or anything. Just says, fuck you. You go, oh, sorry. I have to shoot you in the face point blank. How dare you? How dare you say fuck you to me? It is the worst thing you've ever done in your entire life. Here it is. It's the last thing you will ever do. Spin cycle full on now. Scoop, State Department reviewing options for possible recognition of Palestinian state. Yeah, okay, dude. Sure. American foreign policy summarized by Benny Boy. Israelis like to build, Arabs like to bomb crap, and live in open sewage. This is not a difficult issue. Hashtag settlements rock. That's it. Anyway.
Escalation, but certainly America is setting out how it will respond after those deadly attacks at the weekend, but they say they do it in a calculated manner, at the same time sending a message to Iran that this sort of activity from their proxies will not be tolerated. Matthew.
Nick Peake there in Jerusalem. Thanks very much for the perspective where you are. Let's go back to Washington to our State Department correspondent Tom Bateman, who was listening to all of that. And Tom, what was your assessment?
Well, let's talk about Iran first of all, because, you know, what is new today is that our colleagues at CBS News reporting that the approval has been given for strikes over a series of days. And crucial.
What I mean by collaborative is like, this probably is not collaborative. Here's what my assumption is. Okay. Wee woo, speculation alert. The United States of America went to Iranian proxies or went to like the Iranian spokespeople and whatnot and told them, hey, you got to give us a fucking dub here. Okay. We have to hit some shit. And then Iran probably was like, if you hit our shit, we will fight back. Okay. We will have our red lines and we will enforce those red lines. If you go above those red lines, we will fucking fight back. So then America was like, all right, well, here's what we're going to fight against. These are the positions that we're going to bomb. The IRGC pulls out. Maybe like some of the militia pulls out too from those positions. You blow up a bunch of places. You blow up a bunch of places that are going to be mostly empty or maybe have like some militia in it. Okay, what the fuck is going on? Hold up one moment. And you know, that way, win-win. America looks good. America gets a little bit of a dub.
Crucially on Iranian personnel and facilities, but not inside Iran itself. Now, I think there's two things behind this. The fact that this information is now coming out, because what we heard from Lloyd Austin is they always say they're not going to sort of telegraph their military action. They're not going to speculate before it happens on exactly where may be targeted. That's the very sort of public from the podium line. But this information is now coming out obviously from elsewhere in the administration, because I think what they want to do is to show to the Iran hawks here in Washington that they are going to respond decisively. It is coming, but they're kind of keeping things in a holding pattern, because people will be asking the question, well, why haven't there been any military strikes already since these 3 soldiers were killed at the weekend? So I think there's one thing to say about the targeting, and that is it's very notable that this does not mention Iran itself. That's what some Iran hawks here want to see, but it does talk about Iranian personnel and facilities in Iraq and Syria. Now, that is still would be a very, very considerable action. There are Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, IRGC, Iranian personnel in parts of Iraq and Syria. So the targeting of them by the US would be significant. That is supposed to meaningfully deter further strikes against US personnel. But, you know, the fact is the reported approval here doesn't appear to be against Iran itself. They're trying not to draw in Tehran into a wider confrontation, direct action.
Mehmet Walsh says, instead of targeting foreign nations you've meddled with for decades and instead, I don't know, target your healthcare and shit education, yeah, good luck. Yeah, this is at the heart of my argument for decades at this point. I'm always saying this exact same thing. How about we do a war on like actually fucking things that genuinely, legitimately harm Americans. Okay, how about we do that? Anyway, we can't though.
Between the US and the Iranians. And I think it's important here that, they've also mentioned the weather. And I think they talk about cloud cover. I think there is a suggestion this perhaps hasn't happened so far because they haven't got the weather to guarantee the targeting. That's a kind of sidebar mention towards those more hawkish members of Congress that I mentioned. They're perhaps suggesting this is why it hasn't happened yet.
Really briefly, Tom, I mentioned there a really lengthy apology for that hospital stay, that cancer diagnosis that he'd had, but he'd kept it from his department, the public and the president. He went a great length to go through the detail of all of that. This, I think, the first news conference he's actually had since all of that controversy blew up.
Yeah, I mean, it's the first time he's been at the Pentagon publicly since all of this. This has been this has put huge pressure on Joe Biden during, the biggest military conflagration in the Middle East, in many, many years that he's been, this crisis that he's been trying to deal with. He's had his own defense secretary. I mean, literally taking part in calls about operational activity from his hospital bed.
Do they intentionally mispronounce words? Yes, bro. They're British. Okay. Controversy. Yeah, it's great. Lloyd Austin is supposed to be the big guy. Okay. Lloyd Austin is supposed to be the wheeler and dealer in this situation too, like more so than even Anthony Blinken. So the fact that he's out here dealing with fucking cancer and is like mostly in the hospital bed kind of puts things into a really weird situation.
On an issue of transparency, of accountability, because the senior level of the administration didn't know about the fact he was hospitalized at the start. So we had this very, very lengthy apology, a very, very lengthy explanation, as he put it, as to why he hadn't told the president at the start, and he said he was very sorry for that. It's been a very difficult episode, both for the White House and for the Pentagon during this very serious.
Yeah. Yeah, here's what I was talking about, by the way. Here's the horniness that you have from the likes of Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham and others look at the situation and go, it's not hard enough. We have to kill Iranians and hit them hard and hit them directly. Which, in my opinion, is one, immoral, two, really fucking stupid, and will escalate conflict, pull us into fucking World War III, okay? I don't know. It's just, there is no upside to this whatsoever.
Reaction, South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator, good to see you. Let me begin tonight with this. And I did, by the way, love your comments that they'll have blood on their hands, what's happening in the hearing today. We just had Josh Hawley on about, okay, Joe Biden said he's going to respond. There's been nearly 200 attacks.
Yeah, he's going to respond, except not hard enough. This actually is a perfectly analogous situation to what I always say. Pull yourself out of like pull yourself away from the actual story that we're covering for a brief moment. Let's take a deep breath and let's look at the situation that we have in front of us. Okay? Joe Biden, behaving in an incredibly reactionary manner, is never going to get the proper recognition from the right, because it doesn't matter. They will always defeat you. They're the right. They're the right wing. They're the real reactionaries. No matter how far right you go as a Democrat, you will always lose to the real right wing. You cannot out-patriot them. You cannot out-racist them. You cannot out-compete them on immigration. And the Democratic Party in this last quarter, for some weird reason, maybe because they just genuinely want to lose, I don't fucking know, has decided, oh yeah, no, what we should be doing is hit the most incredibly reactionary strategies that we possibly could lending credence to the psychopathic nonsense that the Republicans push for on a daily basis and completely lose to them. We're losing the arguments across the board. There is no counter messaging against immigration being perceived as a problem, a national security problem. It's done. We've given up on that front completely. Okay? There is no counter messaging against like potentially de-escalating conflict. We've completely lost ground on that front too. Okay? It's just terrible. This is why I say it doesn't matter what I do or what I say or what you do or what you say. You will never be able to change the results of an election if the Democratic Party itself is doing everything it can to lose. Okay? John Fetterman waved the Israeli flag from the roof of an roof at anti-Israeli protesters that showed up at his house in Braddock, and the red pilling of Fetterman continues. Yeah, I saw this. This is like so weird. It's such a weird thing that he's doing. It's just so odd. He has become more pro-Israel than pro-Pennsylvania. Most historians estimate the U.S. to be a right-wing authoritarian dictatorship by 2040. Get the fuck out of here. Come to Germany is the better Turkey. Yeah, no. Germany is also awful, especially when it comes to Israel. Like, is it the stroke? I don't know.
Against American service members in Iraq and Syria. This day was inevitable because Joe didn't lift a finger. With over 175 attacks, he didn't do a thing except take out an empty warehouse. So he's emboldened Iran the way I see it. What's your take?
Germany is also going full tilt fash. What are you talking about? AFD and its rise to prominence has been, you know, pretty devastating. Every European country is going full fash, okay? Direct descendants of fascists are no longer afraid. They are no longer afraid to push fascist opinions publicly. You got Geert Wilders in the Netherlands. You have the AFD in Germany. You have Marine Le Pen in France. These are all of the people. Yeah, Italy is another one. Italy's perfectly represented to this too. Italy currently is run by a fascist, like an open, out and about fascist. Something that I have brought forward time and time again. A party that was openly Nazi 20 years ago is now the third biggest in Sweden. That's another one. And it all happened because of the capitulation that supposedly center-left parties made towards fascist reactionary politics as they simultaneously allowed all of the social safety nets to be crippled. Okay? And instead of recognizing that this was actually diminishing the quality of life of the public, many people saw, as their social safety nets were withering away and their quality of life was actually getting worse, they also saw a bunch of people that don't look like them entering the country. So they hyper-focused on that, and they went, oh, it must be because we now have, like, more Muslims here. Okay? It's a great way. If you want to privatize every sector that was previously nationalized or previously socialized, the greatest thing you can do is slowly but surely move towards undermining the public sector and defund it year over year over year. You can't do it at once. You have to do it over the course of like many decades. It's the frog boiling in the pan analogy, and before you know it, you're boiled. You're done. You're dead. And they do that. And while they're pulling on that one front with the inevitable interest of genuinely privatizing all of those sectors, okay, with the influx of cheap labor coming from refugee status migrants and just immigrants in general, the natural-born citizens of said nations become more and more reactionary because they associate cheap immigrant labor with the real problem. The real problem is not cheap immigrant labor. Okay, the real problem is the government's personally withering away all of those social institutions that you took for granted year over year, as they kept saying, yeah, no, it's the migrants that are at fault here. Anyway.
Well, number one, you're dead right. Why didn't this happen on Trump's watch? Iran was afraid of Trump. He killed the head of their Revolutionary Guard, Soleimani. Biden has yet to hit Iran directly. The Iranians could care less how many Houthis you kill. They could care less how many Iraqi militia you killed. The only way—
That's insane. We have to strike Iran directly is an insane statement that you are making. This should be, I don't know, you should be, I don't know how to describe it. This is not a thing that you should be able to say with no pushback whatsoever. But here's where we're at now.
The way they will change your behavior and stop killing Americans and attacking our troops and trying to bomb ships in the Red Sea is for Joe Biden to hit their oil infrastructure and start killing their soldiers inside of Iran. I'm not asking to invade Iran, but I am calling on President Biden tonight. Go to the source of the problem. If you don't hit the Iranian oil infrastructure and hit them in the wallet and make them fear you, they're going to keep killing our soldiers. To the 3 families whose loved one lost their life, it breaks my heart this was all preventable. So, Mr. President, hit Iran and hit them now and hit them hard to protect Americans in harm's way.
I don't know if he has it in him.
Yeah, dude, that will definitely make the situation better. You know? It'll definitely make the situation for Americans better. Just like American civilians and certainly American military in the region. Great idea, man. Thank you. He's not asking to start a war, but starting a war would be so sick, is what he's basically saying. Anyway, I'm going to move on from this. Here, what is
Joining
this?
us now is Admiral James Stavridis, the NBC News chief international analyst.
This is like, I like that we're hitting both sides of the political spectrum here. On the one hand, we went to Fox News where Lindsey Graham is like, we got to hit Iran and hit Iran hard. On the other side, we go to MSNBC and you have the wife of Alan Greenspan at MSNBC interviewing a general who is like, we have to hit Iran and hit it hard. This is how you manufacture consent. This is how you arrive at this bipartisan consensus that is always reactionary, that is always psychotic, that will always backfire. Okay? But guess what, dude? Guess what? We'll make a lot more weapons. Okay? Do you want any social safety nets? Fuck you. Do you want weapons? Well, we're going to make more weapons. Okay? Whether you like it or not. Okay? Love when we got like psychopathic generals that are on MSNBC going, we have to hit Iran and hit Iran hard. And it's like usually a dude that is directly working with the federal government on defense contracts after his 40-year military career as being like the most bloodthirsty general. It's like, yeah, that's right. This is here we have on MSNBC tonight, Mr. Spider Rapist. Here it is. This is General Douglas Spider Rapist McDouglas. And it's like he also now works for fucking, it literally it's always some shit like that. It's like General Douglas Spider Rapist McDouglas here joining us now to talk about the level-headed response to the Iranian acts of violence.
Analyst, former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO. Well, Admiral, you've seen the drama coming from the Pentagon today. We should first point out that the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin, he said that he was clearly limping. He said he's still recovering. He's having physical therapy, but he was very open about the ongoing investigation and the fact that basically he messed up.
Yeah, Lloyd Austin, whom I've known for decades, did what good leaders do and what men and women of integrity do. When they make a mistake, they admit it, they own it, they improve, they go forward, and any further action would be up to the president. And I think Lloyd Austin did exactly the right thing in coming forward now. He made a mistake earlier, but he's handled it as well as you possibly can at this point. I wish him well in his recovery. He's a fine military officer, and I think continues to serve the nation.
I think all of us wish him well.
Okay, get to the blood. Get to the blood.
In place of their choosing, and he pointed out that, as you know better than anyone, as the former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, that will depend on a lot of other factors, how people are moving around, reducing collateral damage, civilian deaths, as well as weather and other conditions. But this has also permitted people to move, to get out, to evacuate some of these militias. So are they taking too long to retaliate?
These are military judgments that are being rendered minute by minute inside.
Dude, every time the person that is like the interviewer, doesn't matter if we're talking about MSNBC, doesn't matter if we're talking about CNN, doesn't matter if we're talking about Fox News, is literally asking, why are we not like skull fucking the Iranians? Okay. Hello, Supreme Commander of NATO Allied Forces, sir. When will we start skull fucking the Iranian soldiers? Okay. Why have we not canoed every Iranian child's skull? When will blood be spilled, sir? It's literally the most insane thing. American foreign policy is holding blood feast. Republican from Iowa, 118 years old. Please, God, let us nuke Iran. Nothing else matters. I'll do anything, please. I just want to see burning flesh one last time before I die. Respectable bipartisan. Okay? It is true. Beanie Tuesday nailed it 100%. Brother, you are literally describing the gay airplane meme. Yeah. It's true, though. It actually is true. And where are all the people now that were like, Biden greatly de-escalated the drone wars, as a matter of fact? Well, I'm so glad he did, so we could just like catch up at the last quarter. You know what I mean? Like Atlas 2 just caught up at the top of the hour and gifted 10 people 10 gifted subs, so they no longer have to see the ads at the top of the hour. You know what I mean? It's just how it is. It's just how it works.